We want to bring in Washington Post national security reporter John Hudson, one of the reporters who broke this story, and John Brennan, former CIA director and MS Now senior national security and intel analyst. John, Director Brennan, to the two Johns, as it were today. Nice to have both of you here if we can. John Hudson, to you first, if I can, for a second. Notably, the White House, the president included for weeks, has pushed back on any claims that there was anything up here. The president said he was taking the legacy, the bigger Air Force One, for, in his words, old times' sake. He wanted the troops to get a chance to see it as well. But your reporting shows that they were hiding what was actually going on this whole time. What's the rub?
Yeah, I mean, it's extraordinary. This Air Force One is the symbol of presidential security. And instead of being that symbol, this was a plane that the president was smuggled out of on a Turkish catering truck. And then subsequently, Air Force One took off with all of the journalists, all of the White House officials there, minus the president and a tight-knit group of people. And basically it served as a decoy, a really extraordinary type of thing, and something that was unbeknownst to the journalists until the Washington Post published its story yesterday.
Well, I'm struck because we heard in that soundbite for the president, he says, yeah, you know, if they get me, they get you too. In this case, if they got him, they only got the reporters. The president wasn't even on that plane. Director Brennan, if I can for a second, what does it tell you about the seriousness of this threat from Iran that they needed to go to such great lengths to shuttle the president secretly onto another plane to get him out of the country, out of Turkey?
Well, obviously they considered it to be very serious, but I think there's still a lot of questions that, have not yet been answered, which is the credibility of the source. Was it a human source? Was it a technical source? Did this person or the technical system have access to actual Iranian plans to carry this out? What was the nature of the threat? Was it going to be some type of long-range missile, a man-pad, like a shoulder-fire missile from the ground in Turkey? Could it have been, claims that there's going to be an IED, a bomb on board the plane or something else? So there's a range of things that it could have been, but obviously they took it very seriously. But I must tell you that in my experience working for a number of presidents, and none of the presidents I worked for would have allowed the White House staff and a plane load of journalists to go if the threat was not mitigated sufficiently for the president of the United States. So clearly they have to take a look at the nature of the threat and why was it not able to be, thwarted, sufficiently so that the White House staff and journalists would have been safe.
So as John Hudson was just saying here, these reporters, the staff, they were effectively on the decoy plane that was, at least as it appears, they feared a potential target here. What responsibility, if any, does the White House have to those individuals on that plane to communicate to them that there is some threat and there's something they need to be concerned about?
Well, they have to do that. I mean,
is that a legal order? I mean, is there?
Well, certainly it's an ethical requirement, I think, on the part of the President of the United States and the White House staff and Secret Service to let the individuals know who are on that plane, such as when, President was landing in Afghanistan, keep the windows, the shades down, take off on a vertical, trajectory or whatever. And you would have been informed about the nature of the security threat, but to have this decoy. Now, the Secret Service in the past has used decoy armored cars. And they want to have a president go off in a different black vehicle.
Right.
But the decoy is manned by Secret Service agents. They don't put individuals, journalists and White House staff sort of at risk. So this is just unprecedented, certainly in my experience.
For its part, we should tell you the White House told the Post that the president and told MS Now as well, as the president has said recently, there are many enemies of America who have their sights on him, and we use every tool at our disposal to address those threats. John, one thing you said to me before we started this conversation on camera was when you were reaching out to sources about this, including those who would have been on that plane, what was the reaction you were hearing from individuals there?
People were shocked. They said, what? Are you sure? There are a lot. This took a month of reporting by myself and my colleagues to try to nail this down. And there were so many really senior officials in this government who had no idea that this had happened, had thought that I had a screw loose and that we really were working on false information. And that's why the Post worked very diligently, step by step, marshaling a lot of the video evidence that you showed at the beginning of this clip to piece this together and ultimately confirm what had happened, which, again, is not just a deception campaign aimed at a foreign foe, but the deception campaign at the press, who represent the American public, and deception of some White House officials who thought they were on the plane with the president when the president wasn't there.
Director Brennan, if I can ask you, as the Post reports and as we have seen over the course of, 3 decades now, there have been other situations similar to this, certainly not like this right now. I think it was 2000. President Bush was going to Pakistan, and that was sort of a secret mission that took place. On trips when we would go overseas with presidents into war zones, a lot of times we would be alerted. You couldn't communicate it with other individuals, including your loved ones. You had to be at Joint Base Andrews for a trip when the president would sneak off to Iraq or to Afghanistan or the like. President Bush during 9/11 as well. Obviously, they went to an undisclosed location, but those on board knew the situation as it was taking place here. This one feels different, though, doesn't it?
It does, because I think the Iranian threat is going to be sustained. I mean, let's look at what the Trump administration did. They decapitated the Iranian leadership. They removed not just their senior government leader, but also their spiritual leader, and Ayatollah Khamenei. And so this is something that I think the Iranians are going to continue to, push back against in terms of trying to carry out some type of strike to retaliate for what they see as just this pattern of killing of Iranian officials that go back, a number of years. So whether it's the Trump administration officials and President Trump himself, as well as Israeli officials, I think the Iranians, there are a lot of Iranians, certainly in the IRGC and within that hierarchy, that really would like to be able to lash back and be able to gain some type of, retribution against the Trump administration.
How concerned should we be about that new Qatari jet right now that is being upgraded, as they say, as we speak right now? But how secure is that?
Well, I'm concerned about not just the Qatari jet, but the old Air Force One. If the Secret Service didn't feel that either of those jets, those Air Force Ones, that would have been Air Force Ones, were able to take off safely, what needs to be done in order to ensure that the defensive measures are going to be upgraded and enhanced? Because I think this is going to be a continued problem if the President of the United States flies to the Middle East anywhere, given the range of Iranian capabilities.
If I can, before you leave, since you're here, the President has had a hard time getting his Save America Act effort through. We've heard a lot of this conversation as it relates to voting restrictions. He wants it to pass through Congress, doesn't have the votes right now. He was asked on Real America's Voice Network about a possible workaround to implement it. I want you to hear what he said. Listen.
The Supreme Court ruled in 1983 under Reagan that INS versus Chadha, that if you declare a national security emergency as the President of the United States, they can't challenge it. It can only be overturned by a 2/3 vote of both houses of Congress. So if you do this in the next month, we will get photo ID, proof of citizenship, and a limit to mail-in ballots. And
Let me just say that stranger things have happened. Okay, I'll leave it at that.
Stranger things have happened. I'll leave it at that. The president says, to be clear, that was an interview, but he was sort of, it seemed, suggesting some ideas to the president. Your reaction to that? A lot of fear about what may happen ahead of these midterms.
I think we also be very worried about what the president might do in order to try to interfere somehow in the integrity of the upcoming midterm elections. He has tremendous authority in terms of the president of the United States, and if he believes that either house is going to shift to Democratic control, I wouldn't be surprised at all if he's going to pull out all stops and use, as he says, every tool at their availability. And with the Department of Justice, as well as with the Republican Congress willing to support him, again, I think we have very legitimate reasons to be very concerned and worried.
Director John Brennan, nice to see you in person. I appreciate it. John Hudson, always appreciate your reporting. It's nice to see a huge scoop from you guys. Congratulations on that here.